talked about this a little bit before you were out last week, but you and I have gone back and forth on it. Games one and two, though, did not go down as I expected it to. Admittedly, though, I did pick the Boston Celtics to win this series. I thought it was going to be a little more of a challenge. And so far, for the first two games, at least in my opinion, the Celtics have blown through the first two games of the TD Garden.
Um, I would say game two, they had to work a little bit harder to win, but they've done this in relatively dominant fashion. And I will continue to say this. This year's run to the finals and probably a championship by the Boston Celtics is fraudulent and unimpressive. I don't care what anybody says. In in three of their four series, their opponent had to go all the way to a game seven before facing the Celtics.
Is that
On
their
top of,
fault?
I don't
Is
care.
that their fault? I mean, they are proving in this series why they were the best team in the NBA all year long, are they not?
They are, but I still say fraudulent, unimpressive. They in
Listen,
every series.
I am willing to give, if you want to say the devil their due, go ahead. But I think the Celtics have impressed me even more in this series than I thought they could. And I was with you up until this series. I said this would be their biggest test. Dallas hasn't had any injuries of note to deal with. And don't give me Lucas out there putting up 30 points a game. I don't want to hear Lucas hurt. It's not an excuse. And Boston, like I said, even game two, where Dallas may have given them a little bit of a fight in the first half. Second half, Boston came out. They played defense. They put their foot down. And, really outside of a mini run by Dallas Wade, the second half wasn't very competitive. So I got to give the Celtics some credit. They are dominating this series.
Yeah, you do have to give the Celtics some credit, but overall, I still say this run is fraudulent and unimpressive. And if Dallas is going to get back into the series, they have to win game three tomorrow night in Dallas. It's just like in the Stanley Cup final where the Florida Panthers didn't play their best game, yet they still won game one against the Edmonton Oilers 3-0. And then the Panthers come out in game two and play more of their style of hockey, and they win game two 4-1. So now Edmonton's in a very similar position to Dallas, where if the Oilers don't win game three on their home ice on Thursday, they're in serious trouble.
So I had said that when you take a look at this series, I understand Luka Doncic is the best player in the series. And I understand that Kyrie Irving is probably, and you could make an argument, I guess, for Jalen Brown, but most people would say Kyrie is probably the second best player in the series heading into these finals. That's why many people gave Dallas the advantage. But I said, if you look really hard at these playoffs, and me and you have talked about this, we talked about it at the beginning of the playoffs, and we've talked about it all the way through the playoffs, how this year's NBA playoffs was a changing of the guard. How we went from the LeBrons and the KDs and the Stephs and even the Giannis's to a certain extent to your Lucas, to your Anthony Edwards, to your Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, etc. When you look really hard at a lot of these playoff series, most of the stars and superstars have canceled each other out. And it has come down to your third best player, your fourth best player, your fifth best player, your third and fourth best starters, and your first two players off the bench to give you production. And the biggest difference in this series so far is Boston is getting constant production from Drew Holiday, from Derek White, from Kristaps Porzingis, who may or may not play tomorrow night in Dallas, and that could be a huge factor because of what he's done in the first two games of this series. And
Again, if he does not play, the Mavericks need to take advantage. But to add on to what you're saying, you know, think about think about it. In the first series, the Mavericks basically had to only focus on Paul George and James Harden because Kawhi Leonard was in and out of that series. Then in round two, they really only had to focus on Shea Gilgis Alexander because Oklahoma City doesn't really have anyone else that you would consider like a star player or at the caliber of a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And then in the conference finals, it was basically only Anthony Edwards. Well, when you look at the Celtics, they've got Jason Tatum, they've got Jaylen Brown. And then you look at their complementary pieces, it's Drew Holiday, it's Derek White, it's Kristaps Porzingis, it's Al Horford, it's some of these other guys coming off the bench. The Celtics are not built like the Clippers, the Thunder, the Timberwolves, if you get what I'm saying.
I would say that Jason Tatum has had at best a D series, and the Celtics are up 2-0. And that is really scary for the Dallas Mavericks, who Kyrie Irving did not play well in game one, and then he came out hot in game two at 8 points in the first quarter, and then disappeared and scored 3 points in the next two quarters to give you 11 to add into the fourth quarter. That's not going to win you games if you're the Dallas Mavericks. And Luka pretty much has to pull an 07 and 2018 LeBron here, in my mind, in the next two games and go for 45, 10, and 10 and pray you get 3 or 4 threes from PJ Washington, and you get some sort of production from Gafford and Lively, and you get 25 from Kyrie Irving on top of it. Because unless the Boston Celtics just have a terrible shooting night, which they probably will be prone to do at least one game in this series, Dallas doesn't have enough scoring punch to match Boston's.
No, they really don't. And I'll give Derek Lively a little bit of a break because I know he's going through a little bit of family stuff. I think his mom just recently passed away or something.
Yeah, his mother just recently passed during, I think it was either during these playoffs or right before these playoffs. So
So
yeah, again,
I'll give Derek Lively a little bit of a break in that regard, but like Maxi Kleba, yes, he's coming off of an injury, but he's really giving you nothing.
well,
Derek,
Boston's also gotten him in foul trouble a lot. They're attacking him as soon as he's on the floor.
yeah, but like, why isn't Tim Hardaway Jr. playing at all? Why isn't Tardy playing at all? Like, we've seen
Well,
these guys.
Hardy played some minutes. He didn't play a lot, but he got in some minutes in game two, made a couple of big buckets. Um, I just think like Dallas is. I think it's basically Luka or bust. As great as Kyrie, I think Kyrie and Luka would have to basically duplicate a LeBron Kyrie Game 5-esque 41 points apiece performance just for Dallas to have a chance. Because the way I look at it right now, the way these guys are playing, I predicted 7 games at the start of this series. I'll give Dallas one. I'm all the way down to 5 games right now. It does not look competitive. Again, can Dallas win these next 2 games and maybe get back in the series? Yes, but it's going to take a 180 from what I've seen the first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't make an official prediction on the show, but like off air, I was saying Dallas can win this series. I was actually saying Dallas in 6. Yeah, Boston's like, yeah, no, that's not happening.
Well,
So
again, so I had a commenter, and I don't remember the commenter's name, but it was on my Britain's World video where I previewed the finals. And he had said, if you take a look at the last 4 finals prior to this one, the Miami Denver one, the Golden State Boston one, the Milwaukee Phoenix one, and then LA and Miami. They said, while Miami and Phoenix and Boston and then Miami again, well, they might have been deeper than those team championship. LeBron was the best player in that series. Giannis was the best player in the series. Steph was the best player in the series. Jokic was the best player in the series. And I get it. That's why a lot of people did pick Dallas to win this series. Because again, they thought Boston may be deeper. Luka's the best player in the series. Well,
right,
it may not matter when the team that's deeper also pretty much is almost equaling Boston's role players are pretty much equaling the production that Luka is giving Dallas.
yeah, and Dallas's role players are not matching Boston's role players. It's really
Not at
that simple.
all. Luca is pretty much playing 1-on-5 right now, and there's going to be people out there, like I alluded to earlier, that says, "Well, he's hurt. He has a knee injury. Could you imagine what he'd do without?" No, I don't buy that. I don't care. I know he was getting treatment worked on him before the game. You know my rule, and this is across all sports. If you're out there playing, especially if you don't have a noticeable wimp or grimacing or anything like that, it's fair game. I have to critique you like you're healthy until you legitimately tell me, hey, I cannot play. I have a legitimate injury. I can't move, etc. I'm going to grade you like you're 100% healthy. And while Luca, I would say his game one was a pretty okay game of like a B minus B game. I think he gave you about an A game in game two, and you still lost.
Yeah. So, I mean, Game 3 is a must win for the Dallas Mavericks. It
No
really.
ever come back down for Rio. I do think this is the way, and I don't know which order it's going to go, but I think that this is the way both of these two games in Dallas will go. I think one of the games will be the Mavericks will shoot the hell out of the ball. Boston will have a bad night. Dallas will win comfortably. I think the other game will be a very close nick and tuck, back and forth type game where Boston on the defensive end will make a key stop. Either Brown or Holiday will get a steal or a block or something will happen. Boston will win one of the two games in Dallas. We will go back to the TD Garden. And at this time next week, when we are on the air on Championship Rings, we will not be discussing Game 6 of the NBA Finals because we will be congratulating the Boston Celtics on winning an NBA championship.
And breaking a tie with the LA Lakers for the most championships in NBA history. Because, sorry, Lakers, I don't count your in season tournament banner for shit.
So, with that being said, Josh, when you take a look at the first two games of this series, who would you have right now as the NBA Finals MVP?
Jalen Brown. And I would say it's kind of not close, to be honest with you. Like, I get it. Drew Holiday has made big shots. Kristaps Porzingis had a big game one. But you look at the way these two games have been played out, or have played out, I should say, and it's had both games really had Jalen Brown's fingerprints all over them. So I would say, in pretty convincing fashion, I would say Jalen Brown.
And you know how much I like Jalen Brown. Me and you have battled in the past about Jalen Brown versus Jason Tatum, who is the Boston Celtics best player. It does sound like more media members are coming over to my side, which is the fact that Jalen Brown is the better player. And by the way, Jason Kidd said it during, before game two in a press conference. I know some people think it was gamesmanship by Dallas. I don't. I think Jason Kidd actually believes it, and I think those Mavericks actually believe it. But I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on who the finals MVP is because I think it is somebody you mentioned, but I don't think it's Jalen Brown.
Wait, can I take a guess as to who you think it is?
Yes, go ahead.
Drew Holiday.
No. I think right
Porzingis?
now Kristaps Porzingis is the difference maker and the MVP in this finals. I think his production, because you guys said he didn't have a great game too, but he still gave you 18 points.
Right.
His 18 and 20-point spurts in production are the difference here for Boston. It is a massive lift where he has basically been the second best player for Boston in this series. But production wise and offensively, he is going on these 5-minute little bursts where he's just putting in point after point after point, rising up over these Dallas small defenders and just putting the ball in the basket. And he's shooting the ball unconsciously. That when he's giving you that, it makes Boston more on what they look like already.
Sure. And I totally get what you're saying about Kristaps Porzingis. But if Jalen Brown was injured and not able to play, maybe the Celtics still win the first two games, but I don't think they would look like this.
I would agree to that, but here's the thing. I think you can make a case for Brown. I think you can make a case for Holiday, and I think you can make a case for Porzingis. Because I think if either one of those three miss one of those two games, especially game two, Dallas might actually win that game. I do think that what we've seen out of Boston is Porzingis is a luxury. He's not a necessity. We've seen them win playoff games and series without him, but you can just see when he comes in the game. Jalen Brown didn't have a great game one. He was great in the defensive end, but shooting wise, he was not great. He missed a lot of free throws as well. I think that Porzingis has been the catalyst to extend leads when the game has been a little rocky and teetering towards Dallas potentially making a comeback.
Sure, but you look at what Jalen Brown, you have to look at like both sides of the ball.
Well,
When,
do you? Because the MVP is more of an offensive stat. I mean,
sure,
it just
no,
is.
I I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. But by the same token, you look at what Jalen Brown is doing on the defensive end. I mean, think about who he's had to go against in these playoffs when everybody's been healthy. Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Halliburton. Um, can't really say anybody on the Miami Heat because Jimmy Butler basically was a no-show. Um, and then in this series, I think Jalen Brown has been the primary defender on Luka, if I'm not mistaken.
They have thrown different bodies at him. I've seen Tatum on him. I've seen Holiday on him. I've seen Pritchard on him. But yes, Jalen Brown has guarded them. But I could, by the way, also say the same thing about Porzingis and just the blocks he's made on some of these transition plays and getting down the court and getting easy, fast breaks. He hasn't been no slouch on the defensive end either.
Neither you're you're certainly right about that, but I just feel like I look at Jalen Brown as a healthy Klay Thompson when before Klay's injuries. I'm not saying Jalen Brown is the caliber of shooter that Klay Thompson was before his injuries. That's not what I'm saying. I'm looking at when Klay was healthy, people were saying he was the best two-way player in the league. People were making that argument. I feel like right now you can make that same argument for Jalen Brown. Can you not?
I think he has a case, though I don't know about that because I think his offensive game sometimes is not as lethal as what it would be to be the best two-way player in basketball.
Okay, fair. Again, I'm not definitively saying he is the best two-way player, but I feel like he's given himself a strong argument to be at least in that discussion.
By the way, if you want me to be totally honest, I've alluded this to be. I don't care if they're winning the series or not. The best player on the court the whole series so far has been Luka. So to me, if they're remember that discussion when Andre Iguodala won the finals in 2015, and there was talk about LeBron could he win the finals on a losing team, which only happened like in the first year of existence. Once say Dallas gets this, let's say they come back and they even it up at two, and let's say Dallas gets this to 6 or 7 games. I think there's a world out there if Luka continues this number. I would consider making him the MVP of the series on a losing team because no one's putting up numbers even close to him.
You could definitely make an argument for that, but again, like you said, the Mavericks would have to push this to 6 or 7 games.
At least 6, and if they somehow push it to 7, which in order to win the series, this is the way I look at it. This is why I thought Game 2 was so critical because after game one, I kind of thought Boston just had a crazy shooting night. Dallas was going to bounce back. Their role players were going to play better. Porzingis and Holiday and White and Pritchard weren't going to have as good of a night. And I thought Dallas could steal game two. Now you got to win 4 out of the next 5 with 2 of them potentially in the TD Garden if you even get to that point. And you have shown no signs that you can do that and completely flip this series 180 on its head.
Yeah. I mean, a series doesn't start until a team wins on the road. So,
Well, that is true, except for this series, because it feels like it started. Because it feels like Boston's thrown 2 Mike Tyson shots.
yeah. I would agree with that.